Good morning. It's Wednesday morning. It's 9 o'clock, and here I am, Norma Cowie with Norma Talks. Today, we're going to talk a little about the subconscious, a little about the belief systems, and a little bit how you can change them. So it's always an interesting thing, but I'm just cracking up laughing because, first of all, I had some orders come in for the tarot books and finally got to be able to make the one up that I needed to send out. And I went looking for the orders this morning, and I know there were three waiting and found one, can't find the other two. So after I've completed this, my trusty pendulum and I will become a detective and figure out where they've gone. And then it's like when I put something new together, I always like to take a look at the symbology that comes out from other things. And the first one was my little God Insight box, and it says, within every problem lies the seeds of its own solution. So obviously that's referring to where on earth my orders have disappeared to. I just had them the other day, so it can't be too far away. Now, the second thing I cracked up and laughed, and I had quite a laugh just before I came on air, was I said, oh, what tarot card represents today? And five of them came out in my hand, and all of them are not very nice. Like what you would look there with, all cards have a solution in them, but it was like there's nothing but problems here with everything going wrong and emotionalism and holding on to where we are. So let's talk about a belief system. And I'm just taking some of my things out of Secrets for Living Happily, and that's what I was trying to. Okay, what do we talk about yesterday? What do we talk about? So the one thing to recognize that, first of all, I want to talk about the subconscious mind. I do a lot of work with the subconscious mind with my clients, and people say, oh, we have a conscious mind, a subconscious, and a superconscious mind. The subconscious mind holds all your belief systems. So one of the things when I was rereading my section in the book on decisions, and I'm just going to read a little bit here because that probably does better than me just, talking off the top of my head all the time. When I first heard the concept, you create on the outside what is on the inside. It began my inward journey, because I was inwardly unhappy about a lot of things. So what I discovered was that I held certain beliefs about life, which were formed by decisions I had made and continued to make throughout my life up to that point, and decisions I had no conscious awareness of making. But the interesting thing is, I found that most of them were made before I was 3. And what happens when the decision is made, no matter what our age is, it's in the subconscious, and we keep recreating it. And one of the ways you can find out what it is take a look at the patterns of your life. Do the same situations come up? Do the same feelings come up? And that's usually because there's what we call a program there that's creating it. I found, this is very true. I found decisions I had made about myself of not being good enough. That was a big one. And many heads on that, and unworthy. And I began to see how I sabotaged myself to prove the beliefs that I had about being not good enough and unworthy were true. And I also saw how my decisions limited me. I had no conscious awareness of what was running my life at all. I was on automatic, creating, reacting, and reacting again and again, all based on my previous unconscious decisions. It was only by changing my belief structures that I began to notice my life truly changing, which is why today, I do all this transformation work for people, because we've got to find where we're stuck. And there's many, many aspects to ourselves where we're stuck. and where things are not flowing, where we're not seeing new awarenesses, where everything is kind of really crazy. Um, and most of mine have been made really, really early. But most people, the major ones that run their lives, there's about five. I find sometimes, depending on what we're working with clients, it can be 7, it could be 5 years, but somewhere in there, there's a pinnacle point where decisions are being made. And those decisions then have an effect on your life. Uh, I just want to talk about like this little point because, I'm a very good example because I had to get myself organized to where I was going. The the original decision that you make is usually buried way deep down inside you. And sometimes it takes, from my perspective as a transformation therapist, is as sometimes we have to clear a lot to get down to that original decision that was made. And usually for most people, it's around 5, between 5 and 7. I find that. Um, Now, I also remember this, remaking the decision about, being whatever, when I was around 10 years old. I remember thinking, what's the point? What's the use of it? Because I was looking to be happier inside myself. What's the use of being happy? Something always happens to stop it. Well, it will when you've got a decision in there and a belief system that says that's what's happening. In the now, I wanted happiness. Later, I went inside and changed the original decisions and found I could keep the happy feeling alive with me. In other words, now at my age, I have a contentedness. Yeah, sometimes I'm a little upset or I get harried about something like this morning when I couldn't find these 2 orders that have disappeared. It's like, but inside, I know that my connection to my source, I know that everything always works out. It's just a matter of relaxing and allowing things to come back into perspective. I also dealt a lot with looking at the percentage of feeling good or happy I had. Like, what was my percentage? Was it 5%, 10%, 20%? Was it 80%? So that began to give me a sense of what was going on the outside of how I was reacting to it. So when we talk about the subconscious and the decisions, the key is to isolate the decision that was made if possible. Changing the decision is a very, very important step, and it will make other steps easier. It Once you've realized the decision has changed, very often that's it. It's gone, and lots of things change in your life, and that's what we look for when we're doing transformation work, etc. So let's talk a little bit about the subconscious. First of all, it's huge. Most of us think, got a little subconscious, a little consciousness, and a big superconscious. The subconscious has got many, many, many compartments, you might want to say, doorways too. It can house the great things in your life and can house the yucky. The key to find what is working the most is to watch your life. Become the observer. One of the things I learned from one course I took, it was be able to sit back and just observe yourself. Observe your thinking pattern. Observe what's happening in the thinking, because the thinking is creating, but it's coming from the subconscious programming. And in the subconscious programming, things become very, very unclear and uncertain. So it does matter how, what, when, or where things are working and how things are going. So first is the awareness. What are you aware of? How do you react? Because I'm sort of in really good company and my energy is really good, guess what? I go and try and do too much, and I found now in the last few weeks actually, when I'm interacting with people, say at a meal or visiting for around 2 hours, then I begin to get tired. But what happens when I get tired is I then my consciousness goes away. And sometimes I say things or I react not as appropriately as I would normally. So again, being aware, being observant of where you're at, because the subconscious will go and take over the programming that you may have put way, way away. And that's why I really like to be able to literally not only change the decisions made in the subconscious, but also to make sure that the ones we have keep on working, and so that there is an awareness factor. So let's talk about decisions. The first way you can really discover what decisions you have already made is look to see what happens. Is your life working the way you want? And if it isn't, what is the pattern that keeps coming? If you're good at checking your thinking pattern, that's a good place to start to sit back and observe the thinking. I used to use driving a lot for that. No more. I'm older now and I can't. It's like it's not a good thing to do for me. Because the conscious mind now is like, it's funny how age works, but anyway, it's best if I don't go trying to figure something out when I'm driving. I've learned, pay attention to when you're driving. Not that I've had an accident or anything, thank goodness, that can stay away. But then I realized I wasn't right on the money. So things can change, but at the same point, being aware. So just sit in your favorite chair and just sit down and watch. It's like the ticker tape. Watch where your thoughts go without judgment. You don't judge your thoughts. You just become aware of them. And then if you have, those of you that know me, I talk about how we freeze and then evaporate and replace the thought. If you have a really strong thought, it's probably attached to a belief system. But you can begin cutting it out way, bringing it further and further by freezing, evaporating, and replacing the thought. The idea is to not just let all the thoughts be wherever, because you want them creating the world that you want. It's like I was getting a little frazzled here a little while ago trying to find these two orders that have seemed to have disappeared. So I had three and one's there, that's taken care of now. But I got, you get a little like, where is it? So you start looking and looking. And then I realized, just relax. When you relax, things come in and make it easier. The more hyped up you can get, and I can be an excitable person, is that it's going to be less. So the key is to be very, very much aware of where your thinking pattern is. Is it working for what you're wanting to create? If it is not working for what you want to create, then you take a breath and you reorganize the thoughts, because the thoughts are always your vibrational rate. And you want calm. For me, I need calm, I need ease, I need, not getting carried away on things, which I can do. It's kind of part of who I am, I guess. And that part I accept. But when it's not working, well, I don't accept it. Okay, let's go take a look at this. So let's go back to that decision making that you've made when you're little. What kind of upbringing did you have? Was it loving? Was it caring? And even though I know I had a very loving and caring to a large degree home, there are still situations that came up when I began to explore my memories and remember things, because I didn't remember back very well for a long time because of some traumas I had. And it's like, in fact, way into my 40s, when I finally remembered some of the really big ones that affect a person's personality. I actually had people come up and say to me, "Oh, you were blah, blah, blah." And why would you say that? By how you behave. I was really taken aback. And some of those comments were proven correct when I began to be able to go right down into my subconscious and take a look at what really was going on. A lot of it I didn't like. A lot of it wasn't, but let me just restructure that sentence. But if I didn't do it, how could I help somebody else? How could I help somebody else has struggled back then? And then what we do is we form ourselves above that. So in other words, we push that all away. Many of us that had childhoods that weren't the greatest, weren't the best. And for someone like me who was pretty sensitive, I made some pretty tough decisions about who I was because of what was happening around and to me. And much of it, I did not have memory of it at all until I began to really explore, like, why am I like this or that? And then had these memories. And so it happens. And then once you have the memory, you can do something with it. So the subconscious is like it's a storehouse. It's a storehouse of what you decided is. So that's why consciously we look at the life. What works, what doesn't work. And when if you really want to grow and become, is that you look at what doesn't, the beliefs that behind what doesn't work. How come you always create this way? Or why, if you have the words always, I always behave this way, or this is always happening, then there's a program running. And that program came from a decision that you made when you were usually quite small. So as you become more conscious, in other words, your conscious mind becomes more involved, becomes more aware, then you can make different decisions about who you are, where you want to go, what you want to do. And to a large portion then, unless you're heading into another old belief that's down there, things will begin to work for you. We are interesting characters. We are not what appears on the surface at all. There's many, and what's I'm just trying to think, there is something out there that talks about, you see a little bit at the top, but really there's a lot that's underneath it. I think I'm trying to remember how that was. I know I got the visualization, but I haven't got the story around it. So anyway, that's what we are. We're a little bit that's visible in the outer world, but our inner world is huge. And the idea is to clean it up. You have a lifetime where you have the opportunity to clean up all that you have. One of my dear people, Karen B, says iceberg. Yes, that's a very, very good example of how what's showing is 10%. The rest of it's underneath, and that's us. But we don't want to be frozen. We want to be able to make sure. And when you think of icebergs, when I was way out at Newfoundland watching some of the icebergy things coming through, yeah, it was interesting. So it's like most of us are wandering around with not a clue of what's happening way, 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 way down, what's going on, except it will come out. It has to express itself in certain circumstances. Why do we get scared? Why do we get nervous? Why do we get whatever? Why do certain scenes? I made a mistake yesterday with a friend of mine. I got carried away telling her about this author I like reading. Basically, when I was telling the story of this one book, it was at Murder and Mayhem, and she doesn't like things like that at all. But I was a little tired. I forgot, and on the way home, because I dropped her off, I went, "Oh my goodness, how could I do that?" Because I didn't think. I wasn't thinking, because I don't mind. I can separate myself from all of that. And when I read a story, and if it's a good story, yes, I enjoy it immensely. But it's like life. You are consistently reflecting into your world where you're at. If you see something and you have an emotional response, it's usually something buried deep down. If you have an aversion to whatever it is, it's usually something buried deep down. It's by going deeper and deeper into those subconscious areas that you discover the wonder of you. You discover the possibility, no matter what the obstacle is, you have the ability to handle it. You have the ability to solve it. Unfortunately, if you have your programming says you're not competent and you can't, or whatever that major thing, and as I said, watch the mind. It'll tell you. If you have a word that you keep repeating, that I'm this or that or the other, the visual that you have, It's coming from a decision made, and I'll guarantee the majority of them made before you're five, and you're not really aware. I started school at 5. I was really terrified. I didn't like it at all. It was only as an adult, when I'd done some personal work, when I went back to school and began to work on my college, high school, finished high school. I went to night school to get my grade 12. I went to college, night school. I had 2 kids growing up and a husband, and did that because it was important to me. But what it did gave me some school learning. And of course, I took psychology and things like that as well. But also, then I was also teaching tarot, doing meditations for people, a meditation group, a psychic development group, as well as doing all this other. And so there's many things you can do to be able to understand your subconscious. But the first thing is become aware. Thinking patterns, how you respond in certain circumstances, and recognize if you can get hold of a thought, you can sometimes follow it through to find out, when did I first ever have that? It takes a little practice, but it's worth it, because then you can begin to put new ones in, because we certainly want to clean up the subconscious. And it all comes from decisions that you make in circumstances. So you can look at those decisions in the present now and realize, oh yeah, the pattern is there through my whole life. Every time this circumstance came up, I made this decision, and this decision is not working because it keeps coming up. If it upsets you, if you've made some that have great success and all those kind of things, then you will be absolutely A-okay. I trust, I feel being a little bit all over the place, but hopefully not too much, that you understand this. You've got those 3 minds. Conscious, that's you in the present. That's where you get to see your thoughts. Sit back, be comfortable. Don't do it when you're driving, because not everybody can separate consciousness. But find a chair, blank wall, or something that you can look at, and then watch the thoughts go by without any criticism whatsoever. You're just looking, and you'll see the pattern. You'll see how that thought is behind creating what your life is, where it's at, what it's doing. And then you can begin to freeze, evaporate, replace it with a different thought. And that's you telling the subconscious, I want to change this. Now, there's deeper work you can do for sure. I mean, that's what I do for people all the time. But it's like, that's a beginning for you, but just don't do it in the car. Do it when you're comfortable, and begin to be aware of how much power you have. So when the old thought comes up, because it's still be held way down, when it comes up, you freeze it, you evaporate it, and you place it with a new thought that you've decided that you want. So it gives you more conscious control, awareness, and brings it all together. So I think that's good. I think I hopefully have explained that. It's not an easy topic always to explain easily, but it's an important one. And I just want to say I'm off for now, but I will be back, because today's Wednesday. I'm losing track of my days. Wednesday, Sunday with a Sunday thought, and then Monday with mental mind treatments. You enjoy. Have a great rest of the week, and I'll be back on Sunday. Bye now. Oh, Yvonne, Karen.